promote a successful regional and national collaborative approach to efficient energy consumption and reduced environmental impacts. And there are some key terms here that we heard coming out this morning: collaborative, partnership, dialogue is repeated. And so we see the main objective then is, as we have said, promoting this collaboration and developing, very importantly, the third bullet point there, a flexible, comprehensive, and structured legislative, regulatory, and standardized plan for energy and environment management in both Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica. What do we expect? We expect an improved policy environment, and certainly when we heard this morning number of policies, and we know that we operate in silos, and what we're hoping with this project is a crossover, a linkage between these silos and among the many players and platforms on which we operate. We want to design the framework, we want to have better practices, and we want to meet essentially business needs for the improvement, as we have said. What are we going to do? We're going to assess the private sector in both Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the current position with respect to legislation, with respect to policy. And so we're not reinventing anything. We're going to be building on what already exists. We're going to try to assess, we're going to search for it, assess how effective it is, and what has been happening, and then what about the institutions? And again, we're going to be assessing the existing institutions, the instruments, the financing arrangements, the rules, the procedures, the standards, and so on, and then the effectiveness of law. So we're looking at what is there, how effective it is, where are the gaps, what do we need to do to make this happen. And the sector considerations are related to the sectors that dominate the membership of both organizations, and we're talking about agro-processing, we're talking about energy sector itself, and Dr. Wright shared with us what was happening in Trinidad and Tobago, very interestingly, the manufacturing sector and the tourism sector, because these sectors dominate both countries. Some of the guiding concepts, again, these are just some of the terms. Incremental, as I said, we're going to be building on what we have, and we're going to be customizing to the needs of our respective countries and the needs of our respective private sector players. It's participatory, highly consultative. This is not going to be a policy framework that will be simply written, but it will be informed to a large extent by the dialogue that we will be engaging in among all of the players. It will be holistic, taking all the pieces together. It will be integrated, because really the whole issue of environment has been resuscitated, so to speak, largely because of climate change and energy, the contribution of the energy sector to climate change, and the need for sound environmental management to ensure that we mitigate the impacts of climate change where we can by reducing our carbon footprints and so on. So we're going to be looking at how we integrate all of these pieces. We know what the challenges to Jamaican business are, and we've heard about them, the high cost, and very importantly, accessibility to mechanisms which can address this dilemma. And this is one of the things that this project is going to be focusing on, and using the resources in an environmentally sound way so that we minimize and reduce where it exists environmental degradation. Meeting national and international environmental requirements, because we can't grow if we stay within our small island environment. So we have to position ourselves to access not only our national but international markets. Very interestingly, last Sunday, the two articles in the two newspapers, one in the Observer, one in the Gleaner, which I thought interesting. The first was reporting on Scotia's small business banking green PME project, which is the innovative financing for small business, and in this case, it's small business to help small business to green the small banking sector, and they engaged in environmental audits and so on, really looking at energy efficiency. So they, of course, will be a significant partner in this. And then the MSME Alliance, so the Small and Medium Enterprises Alliance, is calling for the support on credit and support on energy, and highlighting a number of areas that they would like to see assistance given. Reference has been made to Vision 2030, and within the Vision 2030, of course, there is the issue of energy security and the target. There are several goals there which we're going to be embracing, because, of course, this whole project is not existing in isolation, but existing within the context of the National Development Plans. Trinidad and Tobago has a Vision 2020. We have Vision 2030. What is, I think, fascinating in a way is that the energy sector is strategically important to both economies, Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica. In the case of Trinidad and in the case of Jamaica, first of all, the cost of energy is the bane of our economy. In the case of Trinidad, the production of energy is the strength of Trinidad's economy. And so we're coming together, we're partnering in a very significant way, and I think one way in which we can learn from each other. This is, we can go on. In terms of Trinidad and Tobago, their GDP really has been stimulated by the discovery of their gas reserves and so on. Their energy sector is very, very important, and the importance of that, in an interesting way, in another project that I've been working on in Trinidad in terms of risk management and risk reduction, relates to the gas-based industries accounting for 32% of their exports to the U.S., and they are the single largest supplier of natural gas to the U.S. market. This puts them in an extremely vulnerable position. They're the 5th largest exporter of LNG in the world, largest exporter of ammonia, and so on. And when you look at Trinidad, what their energy sector throws up for them are significant technological hazards. The pipelines cross their urban areas. Trinidad and Tobago is crossed, the urban corridor, in particular their industrial estates, petrochemical industries, hazardous material leaks, explosions, fires, tremendous vulnerability. This is the kind of sign that you see on many streets in residential areas, the natural gas pipeline buried here. This is just sharing with you the landscape. This particular area is Pointe-à-Pierre, and then there's another one, I think, with Point Lisas, which many of us hear about. Major petrochemical industry. So vibrant economy, but extremely high levels of vulnerability. And then energy and climate change, of course, as we said, has become increasingly prominent on the national and international agendas because of climate change linkage and the imperative to reduce the carbon footprint, to implement adaptation strategies. There are some things we can't do anything about, but we need to ensure that we put in place the mechanisms to adapt to the potential impacts. And we know small island states are particularly vulnerable, and the Caribbean itself is regarded as a hotspot in this regard. So the projected outcomes, we will be identifying options. We've already heard about several of the options to provide clean, affordable energy. So what we'll be looking at is options to access, options to develop, creating employment opportunities, new businesses such as the carbon trading and so on, the things we have heard of before. The program aims to contribute to reduced fossil fuel use by a number of factors. And there are significant barriers to the renewable energy development in the Caribbean, and these have come out of a study. Dr. Wright alluded to them or spoke to them. They're policy-related, the business of finance, human and institutional capacities, because we can't do very much unless we have the human capacity and the institutional capacity. So we have to work at that. And then, of course, the awareness and information barriers. So in summary, we're going to be engaging in desk research, field research, looking at what is there, assessing what is there. We're going to be engaging with all the stakeholders through consultations. Um,